It is a custom that if you wear your seatbelt with somebody who's into this stuff, it's an insult. So about 2010, I was contracted to do some work for a Qatari prince who was into cars that through a mutual acquaintance had heard that we were into cars, and the country at that point was starving for people to modify the cars. They didn't have the technical ability to be able to tune these things and modify them. So somehow, some way, I ended up on a plane to that whole area: Abu Dhabi, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Dubai. We had a few connections kind of going through there, and we were trying to see if we can get something to work, maybe setting up a business. And that area had just been exploding, going up very quickly. A lot of people at that time were just hearing about it. That come to find out, there was, the biggest skyscrapers in the world there. They were putting up months before you got there. So I basically show up not knowing what to expect, and I'm in you get off the plane, a backpack. We've got some tools to do our ECU programming, which is we thought would be a good way to kind of like get people familiar with us. So we'd kind of set up a week of going around meeting some people that we were trying to, see how things went. And basically the first night consisted of walking around, going up to people and asking them, "Oh, would you like a tune for your car?" off the street, which sounds crazy, and that's because it is. It's absolutely a nutty thing to do, to try to cold sell someone a ECU tune for their car. But lo and behold, it works. We meet a younger gentleman, and the way it kind of works in Qatar is, even though Arabic is the primary language, most people speak English because of the schooling and how it works. But if they don't know English, it's usually because their career track schooling took a different path. So they didn't have to really put their efforts into their schooling at the time. This gentleman happened to be a soccer player for the national team. He basically had a free ride from the government, and to do whatever he wanted. He was very well known. But he had a brand new Porsche Boxster S at the time. And I'm talking brand new. He had, I want to say, maybe 2,000 miles on it. He had it the month before. And this is one of many cars he had, but it just was the one he was out in that night. And he goes, he starts speaking with him. He's like, "Yeah, I'd like a tune. I want my car faster. How can you make it faster?" It's like, "All right, well, we're working out of a shop that has a dyno there, and we're using our OBD information tool that takes the file off. But for whatever reason, this car has such a new firmware that it doesn't link up. So the way to get the information off requires us to pull the chip off the board, put it to our tool, pull the info, and put it back on." We start hooking all our tools up, which we have our soldering station and everything there, and the soldering station just starts smoking, just starts letting it out. Didn't like the 220 that they had there versus what we had. So we already had this thing apart. We had gotten halfway through the solder, but not enough where basically to get the ECU cover off is a big problem in itself. But we were able to put it back together and say, "All right, well, we're going to finish this, but we're going to have to go back to the hotel. We've got some more power supply there." So, of course, he wants me to ride with him. And I'd never been in a country, so I didn't know what to expect. And typically, you get in somebody's car and you don't know them, you never know how it could go. And his English wasn't great, but he says, "I like to drift." And I say, "Oh, okay." All right. So I grab my seatbelt, and as I'm going to put it on, he goes, no seatbelt. I find out that even though it's the law and tickets are handed out reasonably, all the time they have police officers stationed at the roundabouts that take your plate down and send them out to you. It is a custom that if you wear your seatbelt with somebody who's into this stuff, it's an insult. It's like saying, "I'm giving you, I'm not trusting you with my life." I guess I'm stupid, and I decide not to. I don't want to insult him, so I decide not to wear my seatbelt. And we take off, and we had a following car there with the other people who wanted to. My crew, I guess, more or less, and his crew, and we jumped in and we start going, and he's making it a point to try to lose them. They don't have any, they have traffic cops, but they don't really watch the speeds. The speed cameras do. So if you're a resident, you know about where the speed cameras are, and it's basically a free-for-all in between those. I always say for fast driving, it's not how you're driving, it's how the other people are driving. You could be a great driver, but if someone pulls out in front of you, knowing that stuff is what's important, right? But this guy didn't have any of that. We were blasting into these roundabouts as fast as the car would go, and the second we'd hit him, he'd be sideways, just trying to drift the entire length of the roundabout. And these weren't empty roundabouts. They had cars weaving in and out, and people are freaking out. They're steering off, and he's just hammering it, just going. So we lose our group, and we make it to the hotel where we're staying about 10 minutes before the other group. They show up, and we're able to get all our ECU tuning tools up and working, and we finally get the program edited and give him your typical we'll call boxed can tuned, something with general parameters that are changed to kind of give the car more response. What we were doing in the Mideast that we found out worked really well was we were actually leaving the timing alone. We weren't really advancing it. When you advance the timing in those cars in the heat, they tend to actually detonate, and they'd be pulling themselves back anyway. So if you didn't do anything and just changed the other parameters, cars worked really, really well. We give him an ECU tune, and he says, all right, let's go test it. So of course I got to go back out with him. And again, same thing. We start blasting. He's driving everywhere. And we get to a stoplight, and there are some workers around that are, they clean the streets at all hours of the morning. And he kind of points up and he says, he's like, see one of those? I hit one of those. I said, like the curb? He's like, no. So basically what he was telling me, he was admitting to me at the time that he either had an accident or someone had died or something along those lines. He didn't get into too other specifics, but he made the gesture that person, whatever that would mean. So, I'm still not wearing my seatbelt. I'm like, what really can you say to that admission at that point? So I was just like, oh, okay. All right, thanks. And I'm just hoping we're going back to the hotel. And we get back, and he's conversing in Arabic with his friend over the, how the car feels. I'm just waiting to hear like, oh, I hope everything's good, because if it's not, like who this guy is, he's already gotten away with, what could be manslaughter. I have no idea, And his friend comes back over, not even him. He says he likes it very much. He wants to take you to dinner. I'm thinking, okay, dinner in the Mideast, right? Like this is going to be a really fancy thing, and I don't know what to expect. He's like, he wants to take you to Applebee's, and what I didn't know is that the chain restaurants were actually very popular there, kind of reversed, because they hadn't had them. So I ended my night up having a nice dinner at Applebee's for doing a good ECU tune for one of the rising soccer players. So that was one of the, and I actually spent some more time in the Mideast after that. That was one of my crazier stories. But because of that, I actually got in the habit of not wearing my seatbelt, because I didn't want to insult people, that so much it was very hard to make the adjustment when I actually moved back, that I had to remember to click it in, which once that feeling's ingrained, it's weird to lose it, but I had lost it for a little while. So, but that was my crazy Arab drifting story.
True negotiation starts with finding the right car, and the best way to do that is with Autotempest.com. Autotempest allows you to compare the results from Craigslist nationally with all the top listing sites. So visit Autotempest.com today and see where your next dream car is hiding.